Cop kicks black woman out of billionaire's mansion, but regrets it when he learns who she is. Detective Liam Frost thought he'd seen everything in his small, affluent suburb rowdy parties at the estates lining Lake Michigan. Frantic calls from panicked staff when a prized chandelier shattered, even the occasional family feud at the gates of a multi-million-dollar mansion. But nothing prepared him for the day he crossed paths with a mysterious, elegant black woman perched on the doorstep of the opulent Bellamy Manor, a sprawling property owned by reclusive billionaire Maxwell Bellamy. When he demanded she leave, he had no idea how drastically that decision would transform his life, thrusting him into a whirlwind of guilt, revenge, and shocking revelations he never saw coming. Liam Frost's days in Maplebridge were predictable routine patrols, security check-ins, and the occasional minor complaint. He was 6 years into his career, having transferred from the hustle and crime of Chicago's West Side to this picture-perfect suburb. Although it meant a pay cut from big city overtime, the serenity of Maplebridge had appealed to him. It was a place where his wife, Nancy, and their 2-year-old daughter, Lily, could thrive safely. Around mid-morning, a call came in. Suspicious individual at Bellamy Manor, could be an intruder, or possibly lost. The staff isn't sure. Bellamy Manor always piqued curiosity. Bellamy Manor, the grandest estate in Maplebridge, belonged to the reclusive billionaire Maxwell Bellamy, wealthy, mysterious, and rarely seen. When Liam turned onto Crescent Drive, a stately lane flanked by centuries-old oak trees, he glimpsed the wrought-iron gates of Bellamy Manor. Pressing the call button at the gate kiosk, he identified himself. The gates glided open silently. He drove up the winding driveway, the outline of the mammoth structure emerging through a canopy of manicured hedges and perfectly placed lights. The staff had directed him to the side entrance, a discreet turquoise door that led to the staff quarters. There, on a set of stone steps, sat a woman who did not appear to be a housekeeper, caterer, or any staff member Liam recognized from previous visits. She wore a tailored cream-colored blazer over slim jeans with a black turtleneck peeking out from beneath the lapels. A single statement piece, a necklace featuring a delicate lion pendant, glinted at her neck. She was on the phone, her long curls blowing in the light wind, and though her posture was calm, her eyes flickered with frustration. Liam's first thought was that she looked entirely out of place, not in the sense that she wasn't dressed well enough, but because she seemed neither the typical guest nor staff. He parked, got out of the cruiser, and approached her carefully, hand near the radio at his waist. "Ma'am?" he called. "Are you all right?" The woman looked up, eyes narrowing. "I'm fine," she responded, pressing her phone to her chest. "And you are?" "Officer Liam Frost, Maplebridge PD. I received a call about a suspicious individual. Could I see your ID, please?" She raised an eyebrow, her composure unwavering. There was something about her confident posture that gave Liam the uneasy sense he might be stepping on a landmine. "I'm waiting for someone," she said. "I have every right to be here." A flicker of doubt crossed Liam's mind. Could she be a friend of Maxwell Bellamy or one of his acquaintances? But the call had been placed by the staff themselves, claiming they were nervous about her presence. That alone was enough to arouse suspicion. And, to be fair, in Maplebridge, the wealthy property owners were quick to report anything that deviated from the norm. He pressed again. "May I see your ID?" She sighed, pulled out a black leather clutch, and presented a driver's license. Liam checked the name, Ariel Johnson. The name rang no bells. The address was in Chicago. No red flags or outstanding warrants popped up when he radioed in for a quick check. "Why are you on the property, Miss Johnson?" he asked. Bellamy's staff reported an uninvited guest. Her gaze flickered to the door behind her. "I'm just waiting," she repeated, I do have business here. Maybe the staff doesn't know. At that moment, a uniformed man strode out of the side door. An older gentleman in a neat black suit scurried behind him, appearing anxious. "Officer, please," said the uniformed man, identifying himself as head of security. "Mr. Bellamy's staff called us. They're not expecting visitors, and certainly not her." He gave Ariel a quick, dismissive glance. "She won't say who she's here to see." Ariel's jaw tightened. "I do have business here," she insisted, voice level, but Liam sensed rising irritation. The staff member looked to Liam. "We have no instructions about Miss Johnson. Mr. Bellamy is not on the premises, and if she's truly expected, we'd know." Liam took a slow breath. The proper protocol was to handle it calmly, either confirm her invitation or escort her off the property. If there was no record, she was welcome. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Ariel, "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave the property for now. If you do have legitimate business, you can reschedule or confirm through official channels." He tried to be polite, but there was a finality to his tone. Maple Bridge officers had been sued by influential homeowners in the past for failing to remove trespassers. Ariel's eyes flashed with anger, but she nodded curtly, sliding her ID back into her clutch. "Fine, I'll leave, but this is a terrible mistake." Liam escorted her down the steps. Rain started falling more heavily, and as they walked toward the policeman's cruiser, he tried to shield his face from the droplets. Ariel turned to him, speaking quietly enough that the staff couldn't hear. "When Mr. Bellamy finds out about this," she said, "I hope you realize you didn't have to treat me like a criminal." He stiffened. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." With that, she walked away, stepping into a sleek black Mercedes that Liam hadn't noticed in the staff parking area. The engine purred to life, and she drove off, leaving him standing in the drizzle, the staff at Bellamy Manor behind him, and an odd sense of guilt haunting him. He returned to the side door, where the staff thanked him, but the older gentleman in the suit seemed less pleased. "Officer," he said, "did she say anything else before leaving?" Liam shook his head. "Nothing more than that she has business here. I assume if that's true, Mr. Bellamy or his office would contact you directly." The man sighed, wringing his hands. "Let's hope so. Thank you for your time." As Liam headed back to his cruiser, he couldn't quite shake the unease from Ariel's final words, "when Mr. Bellamy finds out." An hour later, the drizzle turned into a steady rain. Liam spent the rest of the day fielding minor calls, neighbors disputing property lines, a lost dog wandering near the golf course, the usual suburban trifles. Yet Ariel's image hovered in the back of his mind like a spectre. He wasn't new to removing unauthorized visitors from wealthy estates. Typically, they were paparazzi, door-to-door salespeople who ventured too far, or curious teenagers sneaking onto a rumored haunted property. But Miss Johnson felt different. Her posture and tone exuded an air of authority he couldn't place, like she was used to commanding spaces rather than being removed from them. Back at the station, he tried to brush off the unease. Maplebridge was known for its peace and quiet, but an undercurrent of tension always existed between the police force and the local staff in these lavish estates. The staff expected them to instantly remove anyone who didn't belong, no questions asked. And if you ever hesitated, you risked complaints about LAX policing. Officers had lost their jobs for less. Later that evening, Liam headed home to his modest house, modest by Maplebridge standards, though it was still far nicer than anything he could have afforded in Chicago. Nancy greeted him at the door, Lily babbling at her side, bright-eyed and giggling for her father. The sight of his family momentarily pushed away the day's troubles. He scooped Lily into his arms, making silly faces until she squealed with glee. But after dinner, once Lily was tucked in and Nancy was preoccupied with her own tasks, Liam's mind drifted back. Who was Ariel Johnson? Why had she come to Bellamy Manor unannounced? Could it be a prospective buyer? A corporate representative? Maxwell Bellamy was known to host high-stakes business deals at his property, though rarely, as he spent most of his time traveling. It bothered him, though he tried to push it aside. Regret lingered. If she was telling the truth, had he just made a terrible mistake? He told himself he had done the right thing. Yet her parting words hung in the air. This is a terrible mistake. When Mr. Bellamy finds out. 2 days later, Liam was refueling his cruiser at the local station when a message crackled over his radio. "Officer Frost, please return to the station. Captain wants to see you." The tone of the dispatcher made Liam's heart jolt. "On my way," he said, capping the fuel nozzle quickly. Inside the Maple Bridge PD headquarters, a tidy brick building that belied the town's wealth, Captain Rosalind Carver sat behind her large mahogany desk, reading through a file. She was a steely woman in her 50s, recognized for her excellent record and no-nonsense attitude. When Liam entered, she gestured for him to shut the door. "I just got off the phone with Maxwell Bellamy's personal attorney," Captain Carver said, leaning forward. "They wanted to discuss an incident involving you and a Miss Ariel Johnson." Liam's pulse quickened. "Yes, Captain. A few days ago, I was called to the property. The staff said she was trespassing." Carver held up a hand. "Bellamy's attorney claims Miss Johnson was expected at the property, and you removed her without verifying. He also suggests you were racially profiling her." Liam's breath caught. "Captain, I assure you, I followed standard procedure. The staff said they had no record of her." "I know you, Frost. I've read your file, and I don't believe you to be racist. But we have a problem. The attorney is threatening to escalate this if Miss Johnson chooses to press charges or file a complaint with the department. Now I need a statement from you detailing the event. We'll open an internal investigation." Liam quickly recounted the story, every detail he could remember. The call from Bellamy's staff, Ariel's presence, her refusal to name who she was meeting, the staff's insistence that she wasn't expected. When he finished, Captain Carver sighed. "Bellamy's attorney claims Miss Johnson is a major investor in one of Bellamy's philanthropic projects, something to do with the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation for Women in STEM. She apparently had an appointment to view the estate as a potential venue for a fundraising gala. The staff was never informed because it was a last-minute request on Miss Johnson's part, and Bellamy personally approved it. He just forgot to notify the staff." A hot flush of guilt rushed through Liam. So, Miss Johnson had been telling the truth. "Captain, I had no way of knowing," he muttered, feeling the weight of the mistake. Carver nodded. "I understand." On top of that, the attorney said, Miss Johnson felt singled out because of her race. She believed that if she were a white woman standing there in a designer suit, the staff might have approached the situation differently. "That's not fair," Liam insisted. "There was a call. I get it, Frost. But you know how high-profile Bellamy is. We don't need that kind of trouble. The press, civil rights groups, this town thrives on its squeaky clean reputation." She paused, then softened her tone. "Look, we're going to proceed by the book. I'm placing you on administrative leave for a few days while we sort this out." Liam's jaw dropped. "Administrative leave? Captain, it's non-disciplinary for now," she assured. "But if Miss Johnson wants to pursue charges or Bellamy's attorneys push the matter, we might have a bigger issue. For the sake of the department, we're going to keep you on paid leave. Let this blow over, and hopefully it'll all go away with a formal apology." Liam stood, swallowing his frustration. "Understood," he said quietly, though the word tasted bitter on his tongue. He left the station with a mix of anger and dread. In his mind, this was an honest misunderstanding, though he couldn't deny that the staff's fear might have played a role in how quickly they wanted Miss Johnson gone. He recalled her confidence, her statement that this is a terrible mistake, and felt the pang of regret. She had tried to warn him. Once home, Nancy greeted him with concern. "You're off work early," she said, eyes flicking over his troubled expression. "Is something wrong?" He hesitated, debating whether to share the entire story. Ultimately, he told her, and she listened quietly. Nancy was practical, her hazel eyes flickering with empathy. "Sounds like you walked into a bad situation, but you have to see it from her perspective too, Liam." Her words felt like a gentle reprimand. He nodded, feeling the strain. "I do. I just wish I could explain." Nancy placed a hand on his. "Maybe you can. If she's truly a good person, she'll listen. Sometimes a sincere apology goes a long way." Liam didn't respond, but her suggestion lingered. Would Miss Johnson even accept an apology? Or was it too late? Determined to save his career and make things right, Liam did something he rarely did. He tracked down Miss Johnson's public contact information. She had to be someone of some note, if she was a key investor in Bellamy's foundation. A bit of searching revealed that Ariel Johnson was a successful entrepreneur with ties to the Chicago tech scene. She'd been featured in a Business Insider piece for founding a startup that brought coding education to underprivileged communities. She was lauded for her philanthropic efforts, especially for young women of color interested in STEM fields. Indeed, she seemed to be exactly the type of person Maxwell Bellamy would partner with on philanthropic ventures. Liam located an email address for her public relations firm. He wrote a concise message, apologizing for the misunderstanding and requesting a brief meeting to explain. Days passed without a response. He sank into deeper anxiety as his leave dragged on, unsure if an official complaint had been filed. Finally, on a Friday morning, an email pinged into his inbox from Ariel's assistant. "Miss Johnson is willing to meet with you. Please confirm your availability for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. at the Redwood Cafe, downtown Chicago." He exhaled in relief. Maybe he could mend things, or at least show her that he wasn't the bigot she believed him to be. The Redwood Cafe was a bright, modern establishment in downtown Chicago, known for organic blends and vegan pastries. Liam arrived early, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks instead of his uniform. He found a table near the back, ignoring the nervous flutter in his stomach. He was used to tense situations, arrests, interrogations, but never one quite like this. Ariel arrived right on time, dressed in a chic black pantsuit with understated gold jewelry. Her expression was cool and unreadable as she sat across from him. He noticed that lion pendant again around her neck, a small emblem of strength or courage. "Miss Johnson," he greeted, standing politely. "Thank you for meeting with me." She nodded, folding her hands on the table. "Officer Frost, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do this, but after some consideration, I decided to hear you out." Her voice was calm, controlled, and Liam felt a flicker of gratitude that she was at least open to a conversation. "I wanted to apologize," he began. "I received a call from Bellamy's staff that day. They claimed you were trespassing, and I followed standard procedures. If I had known you were an invited guest, I never would have." She held up a hand, her brown eyes steady on him. "You can't read minds, I understand that, but what bothered me most was how quickly you and the staff jumped to the conclusion that I didn't belong. There was no attempt to check with anyone inside." Liam nodded, a knot in his throat. "I admit I could have asked more questions. The staff insisted they had no knowledge of you, and they didn't bother to call Mr. Bellamy's office or his personal assistant," Ariel said. "And when I tried to explain that I did have an appointment, though unorthodox, it fell on deaf ears." Liam recalled the staff's urgency, how they hovered, waiting for him to remove her. "I'm sorry," he repeated softly. "It was not my intention to discriminate. I was trying to avoid any confrontation." You have to understand, Maplebridge is finicky about uninvited guests. Ariel stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, a sharp edge to her tone. I've encountered prejudice before, Officer Frost. I've seen how quickly assumptions can be made if I'm in a place where people think I don't belong. I believe that's what happened at Bellamy Manor. Whether you were aware or not, you played into those assumptions. Her words stung, but he knew they weren't untrue. The staff had assumed something about her presence, and he, by extension, had carried out their request. He leaned forward. I can't change what happened, but I want to make things right. I'm on administrative leave now, and there's an internal investigation at the department. If there's anything I can do or say to rectify the situation. Ariel studied him quietly. Then, to his surprise, she let out a sigh. I'm not interested in destroying your career. My lawyers wanted to sue the Maplebridge PD, make it a high-profile case, but I asked them to hold off. My goal is not to ruin your life, Officer Frost. I want change. I want people in places like Maplebridge to stop jumping to the worst conclusion whenever they see someone like me on the property. Liam nodded, relief mingled with a deep sense of responsibility. If you would consider dropping any complaint, I promise I'll do what I can within the department. We have training sessions, bias workshops. Maybe they're not enough, or they're too superficial, but I can push for more. I'll talk to the captain. Ariel nodded slowly. All right, I appreciate your willingness to take responsibility, but my lawyers will still keep the case open if any part of the department tries to spin or suppress the truth of what happened. He offered a tight smile. Understood. Thank you for hearing me out. The conversation ended cordially, if not warmly. Liam left feeling a swirl of emotions, shame for the mistake, relief that she might not pursue legal action, and a hint of admiration for how composed and articulate she was. For a moment, he recalled how out of place she had looked on those steps, but in reality, it was everyone else who had been out of step, refusing to consider that a black woman could be a friend, colleague, or partner of the famously reclusive billionaire. Days passed, and no lawsuits or official complaints were filed. Liam was cleared to return to work with a reprimand in his file. Captain Carver told him that the department had arranged a formal letter of apology to Miss Johnson and the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation. Maplebridge PD wanted no further headlines. Liam expected the matter to fade, replaced by the usual suburban calls. But fate had other ideas. The week he returned, a swirl of rumors about Maxwell Bellamy himself began to permeate Maplebridge. Word had it he'd returned to the manor with a fleet of expensive cars and a retinue of lawyers, bodyguards, and business associates. Something major was brewing. Stranger still, an invitation arrived at the police station addressed to Officer Liam Frost and family. The envelope bore the Bellamy Foundation's insignia, and inside was an embossed card. You are cordially invited to a gala at Bellamy Manor to commemorate the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation for Women in STEM. Join us for an evening of celebration, networking, and philanthropy. Formal attire required. Kindly RSVP. Liam stared at the invitation in disbelief. Why on earth would he be invited to a gala at the property where he had just made a humiliating mistake? Was this some kind of trick? Captain Carver waved it off. I got one too, she said. The Bellamy Foundation is likely inviting all local officials to build goodwill. Nancy was excited about the prospect of attending a lavish gala, but Liam's stomach churned at the thought of returning to that place, facing Miss Johnson and possibly Maxwell Bellamy under such circumstances. Still, refusing might be viewed as rude. Maplebridge politics demanded a careful dance of courtesy and compliance, especially regarding a powerful figure like Bellamy. A few nights later, Liam and Nancy stood on the wide driveway of Bellamy Manor, dressed to the nines. Nancy wore a floor-length emerald gown, her brown hair styled into an elegant updo. Liam sported a borrowed tuxedo, feeling slightly out of place among the town's elite. He recognized some local politicians, business owners, and philanthropic leaders mingling on the front lawn, illuminated by artfully placed spotlights. Soft classical music drifted through the warm summer air. Servers glided with trays of champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Inside the grand marble foyer, monstrous crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light over couples and guests in designer finery. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Nancy clutched Liam's arm. "This is breathtaking," she whispered, eyes wide. The gala shimmered with wealth, gold-trimmed decor, fine champagne, and the town's elite mingling in opulence. Liam tried to relax, but tension gnawed at him. He wondered if the staff recognized him, or if Miss Johnson would make an appearance. They were soon ushered into a lavish ballroom with soaring ceilings. A string quartet played in the corner, and at the far end stood a small stage with a podium. On the tables, place settings were arranged with fresh flowers and crystal stemware. Liam found the assigned seat for himself and Nancy, noticing Captain Carver and some other town officials seated nearby. People chatted amiably, sipping champagne, nibbling delicacies. Liam caught snippets of conversation, business deals, philanthropic updates, and speculation about Maxwell Bellamy's rumored investments. Nancy tried to reassure him with a gentle hand on his arm. "You're overthinking," she teased. "Try to enjoy yourself." Then the music softened. A hush fell over the crowd. A man in a crisp suit took the stage, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bellamy Manor. My name is Jacob Turner, CEO of the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation. Tonight we gather to celebrate progress in women's education, especially in STEM fields. We owe a great deal to Mr. Bellamy for his unwavering support." Light applause rippled through the crowd. Jacob continued, "And we also have a special investor whose vision has guided us significantly. She is the founder of Ignite Code, a non-profit that brings coding opportunities to underrepresented communities. It is my honor to introduce Miss Ariel Johnson." A wave of surprise washed over some guests who recognized the name. For Liam, a jolt of anxiety shot through him. He spotted Ariel stepping onto the stage in a sleek white gown that caught the light. She surveyed the crowd calmly, offering a poised smile. "Thank you," she began. "The Maxwell Bellamy Foundation has been a strong ally in our mission to bring more women of color into the tech world. Tonight, we celebrate the strides made, but our work is far from over." She spoke eloquently about her organization's initiatives, weaving personal anecdotes of how she'd seen firsthand the power of education to change lives. Her presence was captivating, and Liam felt both admiration and regret surging within him. The crowd erupted in applause as she concluded. Jacob returned to the microphone. "I'd also like to introduce the man himself, Mr. Maxwell Bellamy." The applause grew louder as Maxwell Bellamy emerged from the wings, a tall, silver-haired man with a quiet magnetism. He wore a tasteful navy tux, and though the lines at his eyes hinted at age, he possessed an undeniable vigor. He stood at the podium, surveying the assembled guests. "Thank you for being here," he said. "As some of you know, I've long been passionate about supporting women in STEM. Partnering with Miss Johnson's Ignite Code was an easy decision. Her drive and dedication are extraordinary. I'd also like to extend my apologies to Miss Johnson for a recent misunderstanding here at the mansion. The fault lies with miscommunication on my part, and I regret any inconvenience caused." Liam felt his cheeks burn. He was certain the recent misunderstanding was the day he escorted Ariel off the property. Nancy squeezed his arm, sensing his discomfort. Bellamy went on to highlight the success stories of the foundation, how young women were now pursuing tech careers, how they'd raised record amounts in charitable donations. As he concluded, the audience broke into roaring applause. The music resumed, and dinner service began. Throughout the meal, Liam's gaze flickered to Ariel occasionally. She engaged with other guests, a warm smile on her face, her laughter punctuating the conversations. They locked eyes once, and though her expression was neutral, she gave a polite nod in acknowledgement before returning to her circle. After dinner, as couples began to drift onto the dance floor, Liam was startled to see Ariel approach him. She offered a measured smile. "Officer Frost," she said softly, "I'm glad you came." He stood quickly, carefully navigating the cluster of chairs. Nancy turned to greet her as well. "Hello, Miss Johnson," Nancy said politely. Ariel acknowledged Nancy with a nod. "I see you're enjoying the evening. It's quite a turnout." Her gaze met Liam's. "I've spoken to Captain Carver. She told me you've been proactive about improving bias training at the department." Liam cleared his throat. "I'm trying. I can't fix everything overnight, but I want to do something meaningful. I appreciate that you decided not to press charges." Ariel's expression softened. "I don't want to tear down the entire system, well, maybe just enough to rebuild it better," she said lightly. "But I don't believe all officers are the problem. I just want them to see past stereotypes." Nancy offered a warm smile, stepping forward. "Would you like to join us for a drink?" she asked, gesturing to the cocktail table. Ariel hesitated, then nodded. The three settled by a quieter corner of the ballroom. A waiter offered champagne, which they accepted. For the next few minutes, they engaged in tentative small talk about Ariel's background, Nancy's job as a freelance web designer, and Lily's toddler adventures. Ariel mentioned her own nieces and nephews, how she balanced her demanding schedule with family life. For a moment, it felt like normal conversation among acquaintances, not overshadowed by the incident. Eventually, though, Ariel's phone buzzed, and she excused herself, politely slipping back into the crowd. Liam watched her go, mulling over the difference one honest conversation could have made that fateful day. Little did he know, the biggest twist was yet to come. As the night wound down, Bellamy gave a final toast, thanking everyone for attending. People began to disperse, valet lines forming outside the mansion. Liam and Nancy made their way to the exit, bidding goodnight to colleagues and acquaintances. He felt lighter, as if bridging the gap with Ariel had eased a tremendous weight. But as they walked to their car, a commotion erupted near the front gates. Flashing lights tore across the driveway, followed by the roar of multiple police cruisers and a black SUV that screeched to a stop. Liam's instincts kicked in, and he hurried forward, urging Nancy to stay back. Uniformed Chicago police officers emerged from the vehicles, accompanied by stern-looking federal agents wearing suits. One of them flashed a badge at the mansion's security detail. "We have a warrant to search this property," he declared loudly. Gasps rippled through the departing guests, and Liam spotted Maxwell Bellamy, flanked by his personal security, stepping out onto the driveway, confusion etched on his face. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. A man in a crisp suit stepped forward, brandishing the warrant. "Mr. Bellamy, this is in relation to allegations of embezzlement and fraud connected to one of your holding companies. We have credible evidence that funds earmarked for charitable projects were diverted into offshore accounts." A stunned hush fell over the crowd. Ariel, who had been heading toward a limousine, froze in place, eyes widening. Liam's heart pounded. This was the last thing he expected. A swirl of confusion enveloped the scene as photographers, somehow already present, began snapping photos. Bellamy spluttered, "This is absurd. I have no idea. My lawyers will handle this." But the federal agents ignored him, moving quickly past the gates and into the mansion. Guests began leaving hastily, scandalized whispers filling the air. Ariel slowly approached Bellamy, shock and anger coalescing on her face. "What's going on, Maxwell?" she hissed under her breath, though Liam could overhear. "Are you saying the Foundation's funds, my investments, have been misused?" He raised his hands. "It's a misunderstanding. I assure you, Ariel, we'll straighten it out. Please trust me." She stepped back, arms folded, pain flashing in her eyes. In that moment, Liam realized that if these allegations proved true, Ariel's philanthropic work might be entangled in Bellamy's scandal. The ramifications could be huge. "Officer Frost," Captain Carver's voice made him turn. She was bustling through the crowd, gesturing for him to follow. "We need to cooperate with Chicago PD and the federal agents. Looks like they're searching for financial records, possibly stashed here. Let's assist with controlling the perimeter." Though he was off duty, Liam jumped into action, helping coordinate a safe exit route for the departing guests and ensuring that no unauthorized individuals entered the property. He caught glimpses of Bellamy arguing with the lead agent, the tension thick. Ariel vanished into the night, overshadowed by the chaotic swirl of accusations. Liam felt an inkling of dread for her. She'd poured her resources into the Foundation, forging partnerships she believed in. If Bellamy had truly engaged in illegal activity, embezzling or laundering funds, her reputation and her non-profit could be collateral damage. The night ended on a jarring note. While the ball had started as a grand celebration, it ended with Bellamy's estate under federal scrutiny. And though it seemed unconnected to his earlier confrontation with Ariel, Liam couldn't help but feel that the story had taken a dark turn, one that might upend everything for everyone involved. The following weeks were a maelstrom of news coverage, legal maneuvering, and outraged statements. Chicago Tribune ran front-page headlines, "Billionaire Bellamy under federal investigation for possible fraud." Cable news stations sent vans to stake out near the manor's gates, broadcasting live about the unfolding scandal. Rumors flew. Bellamy had siphoned millions from his philanthropic foundation. He'd hidden assets in the Cayman Islands, or it was all a grand conspiracy orchestrated by a disgruntled former partner. Amid the chaos, Ariel Johnson released a statement clarifying that Ignite Code had not received any questionable funds, emphasizing her non-profit's transparent finances. Still, the association with Bellamy cast a long shadow over her. Liam watched from a distance as Maple Bridge became ground zero for the media frenzy. Captain Carver assigned extra patrols around Bellamy Manor to control the paparazzi. Residents complained about the flood of reporters, their once quiet suburb now overrun by cameras and satellite trucks. Meanwhile, the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation's board members scrambled to distance themselves from the allegations. Board resignations poured in, sponsors threatened to pull out. Ariel, who had been planning a major partnership with the Foundation, found herself in limbo, uncertain whether she should publicly cut ties or wait for evidence to surface. Amid the uproar, the department's earlier fiasco with Ariel receded from the public's attention. Liam felt a twinge of relief that the potential lawsuit was overshadowed by a far larger story. Yet, he also worried about Ariel. She had seemed so earnest, so dedicated to her cause. One day, he received a call from an unknown number. "Liam Frost," a voice asked. "It's Ariel Johnson." His pulse jumped. "Miss Johnson, hi. Is everything all right?" She hesitated. "I'd like to talk somewhere private." They arranged to meet at a small diner on the outskirts of Maple Bridge, away from the media frenzy. Ariel arrived, wearing a casual hoodie and cap, clearly trying to avoid recognition. She slid into the booth across from him, glancing around warily. "How are you holding up?" Liam asked gently. She grimaced. "I've been better. Bellamy keeps insisting the allegations are false, but the evidence seems substantial." And in the court of public opinion, the foundation is already stained. She leaned forward. I'm worried about my organization and the young women who rely on its programs. If this scandal taints our image, we'll lose donors, sponsors, everything I've worked for. Liam nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry. I know how much this must hurt. Ariel let out a weary sigh. We can recover, I think, if we show we're independent. But I need to do more than issue statements. I need to find out what really happened to those funds. If it turns out Bellamy is guilty, I want to make sure no one else gets hurt. Liam hesitated, not sure how he could help. I'm just a local officer, Miss Johnson. The feds are running the investigation. She nodded, eyes flickering with determination. I know, but sometimes they overlook smaller details that can prove crucial. I have a feeling that if we just examine Bellamy's personal records, figure out who orchestrated these offshore accounts, we might be able to protect legitimate philanthropic projects from being dragged under. He frowned. I can't just barge into a federal investigation. My department has limited jurisdiction. Ariel looked away, chewing her lip. I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking if you'd be willing to keep an ear to the ground. If you hear anything relevant, or if there's anything that can help separate my non-profit from Bellamy's wrongdoing, I'd be grateful. Liam considered it. He was still dealing with the aftermath of his own misstep, yet he empathized with Ariel's predicament. Okay, he said finally. I can't promise I'll have access to anything concrete, but if I learn something that could exonerate your organization, I'll let you know. Ariel offered a small, relieved smile. Thank you. They parted ways quietly, each weighed down by the swirling mess of Bellamy's scandal. Liam wondered if perhaps this was a chance to make amends, not just for the day he wrongly kicked her out, but for an entire system that seemed stacked against people who tried to do good. As the investigation deepened, rumors circulated that Bellamy wasn't acting alone, that someone within his circle had orchestrated the misappropriation of funds, forging signatures and funneling money into shell corporations. The FBI combed through piles of documents, but a key piece of evidence remained elusive. Liam, while working a routine security detail near Bellamy Manor, overheard a conversation between two of Bellamy's staffers. They whispered about an accountant named Patrick Lynn, who'd been Bellamy's right-hand man for a decade. According to the hushed gossip, Patrick had vanished shortly before the raid, fueling speculation that he orchestrated the entire scheme. Later that night, Liam mentioned the rumor to Nancy, who pointed out that if Patrick Lynn were responsible, then Bellamy might be somewhat innocent, or at least not the primary culprit. The question remained, how deeply was Bellamy involved? A few days later, Liam found himself face to face with Maxwell Bellamy himself. It happened when the billionaire appeared at the Maple Bridge station, without entourage or fanfare. He strode in, ignoring curious stares, and demanded to speak with Captain Carver about increased security at his estate. Liam was near the front desk when Bellamy approached. Their eyes met. A flicker of recognition passed over the older man's face, and a sour expression followed. He clearly remembered Liam as the officer who had forced Ariel Johnson off his property. "Ah, Officer Frost," Bellamy said with a measured tone. "I've heard about the incident with Miss Johnson." Liam tensed. "Yes, sir." Again, that was a misunderstanding. Bellamy's gaze flickered dismissively. "Yes, well, water under the bridge. We have bigger issues, don't we?" He requested directions to Carver's office, then strode away, leaving Liam with a sense of disquiet. The man seemed haggard, burdened by the scandal. But was he truly innocent, or a master manipulator playing the victim? A short while later, Carver called Liam into her office. Bellamy was there, along with an attorney from his legal team. "Officer Frost," Carver greeted. Mr. Bellamy wants to ensure we have adequate patrols around his property due to the media presence and potential trespassing. He's offered a sizable donation to the Maplebridge PD to support additional resources. Liam stiffened. Accepting donations from a figure under federal investigation was complicated, ethically. Bellamy's attorney quickly chimed in, "This donation is purely philanthropic. Mr. Bellamy maintains his innocence and wishes to support the department in these trying times." Carver shot Liam a glance, as if warning him not to comment. She politely thanked them for the offer, though she was non-committal. Bellamy gave Liam a curt nod, then swept out with his lawyer. Once they were gone, Carver sighed, rubbing her temples. "The mayor wants us to stay neutral, but Bellamy's money could really bolster our budget. It's a mess." Liam spoke carefully. "Captain, we should be mindful. If the feds prove Bellamy embezzled funds, how would it look if we accepted tainted money?" She waved a hand in frustration. "I know. The mayor still thinks it could be a PR boost if Bellamy's exonerated." Liam left the office conflicted. Bellamy's potential donation to the police department felt like hush money, intended to keep them from digging deeper or turning on him in the media. One evening, Liam sat in his cruiser parked outside a closed cafe, finishing some paperwork. His shift was winding down when his phone buzzed an unknown number again. He answered. "Officer Frost." A tense voice came through. "Liam, it's Ariel. Something happened. Can you meet me right away?" His pulse quickened. "What's wrong?" "Patrick Lynn Bellamy's accountant sent me an anonymous tip. I think he wants to clear his name. Or maybe he's turning on Bellamy. I'm not sure. He told me about a storage unit where certain files are being kept. There could be evidence that implicates Bellamy or exonerates him. I need to see it." Liam hesitated. "The feds are investigating. You should hand this information over to them." Ariel's frustration crackled through the line. "I tried. They're inundated with leads. They told me to forward the tip, and they'd get to it. But if there's tangible evidence in that storage unit, it could vanish if we wait too long." He rubbed his forehead. This was dangerous territory. Interfering with a federal investigation could have serious consequences. Yet he knew Ariel was desperate to save her organization's reputation. If Bellamy was guilty, the world needed to know. If he was innocent, that too mattered. "All right," he found himself saying. "Where is this storage unit?" She rattled off an address in an industrial district on Chicago's outskirts. Patrick's tip said the unit is under a shell company's name, but he'd left the key and code in a drop spot. He gave me the location. A sense of foreboding washed over Liam, but he nodded grimly. "I'll meet you there. But no one else can know about this. We can't tamper with evidence, so we have to be careful." "Understood. Thank you," she said, relief flooding her tone. They hung up, and Liam geared up for an off-the-record mission that could either blow up in his face or help unravel the truth. He radioed that he was off duty and headed out. The drive to Chicago felt long, tension knotting his stomach. He texted Nancy that he'd be late, offering a vague explanation about a lead he needed to follow. At the industrial park, large warehouses and storage facilities loomed in the dark. Ariel stood by a chain-link fence, wearing jeans and a hoodie. She flashed him a nervous smile. "You're sure about this?" Liam asked. She nodded firmly. "Let's do it." Using the code from Patrick Lynn's message, they slipped into the quiet storage facility. The fluorescent lights hummed eerily. They found the designated unit, number 173, and Ariel pulled a small key from her pocket, courtesy of the drop spot Patrick had mentioned. Inside, the overhead light revealed a cluttered space filled with boxes, file cabinets, and dusty office furniture. Ariel looked around anxiously. "Where do we start?" Liam grabbed a flashlight from his belt. "We search systematically." They opened boxes, rummaging through dusty folders. Many contained old receipts, bank statements for obscure corporations. Some were labeled with cryptic names like Blue Coast Investments or Golden Star Holdings. Ariel found a battered laptop in one corner, its battery dead. Then Liam stumbled upon a file labeled Bellamy Foundation Disbursements. He flipped it open, scanning lines of financial data, a page after page of transactions, some with questionable references to overseas accounts. Another binder contained email printouts with messages that suggested Patrick Lynn was moving money around on Bellamy's behalf. Ariel scanned the files. This proves it. He was siphoning money. Liam's gut churned. The evidence was damning: payments funneled through multiple shell companies, funds marked for charitable disbursements, but never reaching the Foundation's real projects. Then he found a separate set of documents with notations that implicated others, possibly even members of the Foundation's board. However, it was unclear if these documents exonerated or incriminated Bellamy. At least some emails suggested Bellamy was aware of the transactions. Suddenly, Ariel froze. "Did you hear that?" Liam cocked his head. Outside, faint footsteps approached. A metallic clang echoed as someone fiddled with the storage unit's padlock. Liam motioned for Ariel to stay quiet, grabbing his service weapon from under his jacket. The door slid open halfway, and a figure stood silhouetted in the weak corridor light. Upon seeing them inside, the figure cursed and tried to back away. "Stop! Police!" Liam shouted, stepping forward. The figure slammed the door, footsteps racing off. Liam yanked it open, giving chase into the darkened corridor of storage units. Ariel followed at a distance, her heart hammering. The intruder sprinted toward an exit, but Liam tackled him before he could escape. They tumbled to the concrete floor. Struggling, the stranger pulled a pocket knife, slashing at Liam's arm. Pain seared through him, but he gritted his teeth, disarming the attacker and pinning him down. He flicked on the corridor light, revealing a sweaty, panicked man in his 30s, eyes darting wildly. Liam recognized him from photographs. It was Patrick Lynn. Ariel's voice trembled as she approached. "Patrick, you're the one who sent me the tip. Why are you?" Patrick's eyes were wild. I had no choice," he stammered. "Bellamy is dangerous. I tried to get out before it all collapsed. That's why I left the tip for you. But then I realized he might have me killed if too much came out." Liam pressed a hand to the gash on his arm, adrenaline pounding. "What's the truth, Patrick? Did Bellamy orchestrate this fraud, or was it you?" Patrick's face twisted with fear. "We both did," he admitted. "He started diverting small amounts first, then it grew. He said it was a victimless crime, that we'd pay it back eventually. But we never did. When I wanted out, he threatened me, said I'd go down alone if I exposed him." Ariel's stomach churned. "So all these philanthropic funds, the money donors gave to help people?" Patrick nodded, tears glistening. "I'm sorry, I really am. I only left the tip because I thought you might salvage your non-profit from this mess. Bellamy told me to burn everything, but I couldn't do it. Some part of me wanted the truth out, no matter the cost." Liam pressed him for details. "So all these documents are real? They prove Bellamy knew he was stealing from the Foundation?" "Yes," Patrick rasped. "They prove it beyond any doubt. But it also shows the other board members are mostly innocent. He and I handled everything. They had no clue. If you turn this over to the authorities, they'll see that Miss Johnson's organization was just another victim, that she had no knowledge of what was happening." Ariel felt a wave of relief, along with anger and sorrow. Bellamy had duped her, using their shared philanthropic vision as a front for his theft. Sirens wailed outside the storage facility. Someone had called in a break-in. Liam quickly identified himself to the responding Chicago officers, explaining the situation. Patrick was detained, cuffed, and read his rights. Liam and Ariel turned over the trove of documents, carefully explaining that it was evidence. The local officers were stunned, but they recognized the significance of what they'd stumbled on. As they stepped into the crisp night air, Ariel looked at Liam. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "Without you, I wouldn't have found these files or the truth." He regarded her, eyes heavy with all they'd just discovered. "I owe you more than that," he admitted quietly. "I treated you unfairly once. I hope this at least helps repay some part of that debt." She shook her head, offering a faint smile. "You did more than repay it. You listened. That's more than most." In the distance, the red and blue lights strobed across the industrial park, illuminating the path that led them to the truth. The truth that would take down Maxwell Bellamy's empire of lies. News broke swiftly the next day. Patrick Lynn was arrested, and the documents seized from the storage unit exposed Bellamy's central role in the embezzlement scheme. Federal agents wasted no time, issuing a warrant for Bellamy's arrest. Cameras rolled as the once revered billionaire was led away in handcuffs from his estate, his expression a mixture of rage and defeat. Across social media, condemnation flared. People who had once praised Bellamy turned on him. Board members of his foundation publicly denounced him. Donors demanded refunds. A swirl of lawsuits erupted from individuals and organizations that had entrusted him with their money. For Ariel Johnson, the revelations were a bittersweet victory. Official statements from the FBI clarified that Ignite Code, Ariel's non-profit, was in no way complicit in the scandal, and that the documents revealed it as another of Bellamy's philanthropic fronts, used to garner public goodwill while he quietly siphoned funds elsewhere. Ariel's reputation was spared, and in many corners, her bravery in helping uncover the truth elevated her standing as a champion of transparency and justice. Yet the betrayal weighed heavily. She had believed in Bellamy's vision, hoping to expand resources for women in STEM. Now, that dream was tarnished by his deceit. She issued a statement reaffirming her commitment to the cause, promising to continue her work without the Maxwell Bellamy Foundation. Donations poured in from supporters outraged by Bellamy's betrayal, wanting to ensure Ariel's mission thrived. For Liam Frost, the saga ended with a sense of closure. Maple Bridge PD's name surfaced only tangentially, referencing how local police secured the property during the initial raid. There was no mention of Liam's earlier misstep. The press was far more focused on the sensational fall of a billionaire, once hailed as a hero of philanthropy. Still, the captain called Liam into her office. She gave him a scrutinizing look. "I've heard talk that you were near the scene when Patrick Lynn was apprehended. Off duty," she said pointedly. Liam nodded. "Yes, Captain. I was asked by Miss Johnson to look into a potential lead. We stumbled on Lynn in the act." Carver's eyes flicked over him. "And Miss Johnson is satisfied with the outcome of your involvement?" He swallowed. "Yes, Captain. She's cleared my name from any prior misunderstandings." Carver cracked a faint smile. "Well, Frost, I can't say I'd have advised you to do it that way, but it seems you helped bring a criminal to justice. Next time, loop in the department from the start, okay?" He nodded, relief flooding him. "Understood." Days later, Liam's phone buzzed with a message from Ariel. "Thank you again. I hope we meet again under better circumstances." It brought a small smile to his face. Perhaps, despite everything, new paths to understanding and partnership had been forged. Maxwell Bellamy's downfall was swift and brutal, a testament to karma's relentless hand. The billionaire who once glowed under philanthropic spotlights found himself facing decades in prison. He'd stomped on the goodwill of countless donors, defrauded the very people he claimed to help, and in the end, lost it all. In the months that followed, Maple Bridge's quiet returned. The paparazzi vanished, and the grand gates of Bellamy Manor remained shut. The estate was seized, pending legal proceedings, and the local rumour mill buzzed about whether it would be auctioned off. The staff there scattered, searching for new employment. The shining Bellamy name was now mired in shame. Officer Liam Frost, once consumed by guilt for escorting Ariel Johnson off the property, found himself returning to routine patrols with renewed purpose. He championed new training programs at the department, focused on addressing implicit bias and ensuring that every citizen, wealthy or not, received fair treatment. Captain Carver endorsed these measures, partly to repair public trust after the near lawsuit, and partly because she saw that the future of policing demanded it. Ariel Johnson, meanwhile, rose from the scandal stronger than ever. Ignite Code attracted new donors who were inspired by her courage in exposing Bellamy. She expanded her non-profit's reach to more cities, launching coding camps for young women from underprivileged communities, forging partnerships with legitimate sponsors who admired her resilience. Despite her busy schedule, Ariel occasionally returned to Maple Bridge. She visited local schools, encouraging STEM programs. On one such trip, she crossed paths with Liam, who had volunteered to speak about community safety. They exchanged smiles, a silent acknowledgement that they had both changed since that fraught day at Bellamy Manor. Over time, they developed a surprising friendship, grounded in mutual respect. She invited him to speak at an Ignite Code event, where he shared his own learning journey about overcoming biases. The crowd was moved by their story of misunderstanding turned collaboration, a rare hopeful message in a turbulent world. And so, the tragedy of Maxwell Bellamy's downfall became, in a strange way, a catalyst for positive change. Though the mansion that once radiated opulence now sat empty, overshadowed by scandal, new seeds of progress sprouted in its wake. For Ariel, for Liam, and for a community that learned the cost of misplaced assumptions, the story ended not in darkness, but with the promise of a brighter future built on understanding and empathy. Time has a way of unraveling truth, and in the wake of Maxwell Bellamy's epic fall, a fresh wind of accountability swept through Maple Bridge. Liam Frost, once haunted by his mistake, learned the power of humility and genuine remorse. Ariel Johnson, fueled by a passion to uplift young women, rose above betrayal and emerged stronger, forging new paths for the very people who needed her most. Their intertwining stories serve as a reminder that empathy, open-mindedness, and collaboration can flourish even in the shadow of greed and injustice. If you found inspiration in Ariel's determination or hope in Liam's redemption, help us spread this powerful message. Like this video, share it with those who love a story of hard-earned triumph, and subscribe to our channel for more transformative tales of real-life lessons. Let's keep shining a light on what's possible when courage meets compassion.